Which came first to you, the idea of writing an epistolary novel or the fabulously outspoken protagonist, Sybil Van Antwerp?
That's a great question. For me, the vehicle of the letters was the first thing that I started with. I had read 84 Charing Cross Road, which I know is a beloved epistolary classic. That's a very different book than my book, but I had read that book with my book club during the beginning of COVID. And when I read that book, I had such a wonderful experience of reading. It was sort of exactly what I wanted to read at the time. It felt like a kind of book, and other epistolary novels I've read feel this way too. There's something about it that is literary and smart, but there's also something very digestible or approachable about that format. I think because the letters are short and there's often a page break, it feels like an easier entree to digest, kind of, rather than, kind of the regular style of a novel. And so I had felt that way when I read 84 Charing Cross Road. And so usually when I'm starting to write a new novel, I will just kind of start with what I want to be reading. And I think I wanted to be reading more of this book that Helene Hanff had written, and it was so short and I wanted it longer. So I thought, okay, I think I want to try to write a book in letters because of the enjoyment that I had reading it. And then I think probably what happened is it was a matter of asking myself what kind of a person would write enough letters to become enough for a story, and what kind of a person would have been kind of narrating their whole life in this form. And Sybil, the main person in the story, sort of arrived to me. She arrived, and it was clear who she was in my mind. I could hear her voice, and I began, and that's really how it got going.
You mentioned something that I really liked, exactly what you said. There would be long letters, and then you'd have the short ones when she was writing to the kindred or the garden club. They would be very brief and succinct, and she was annoyed. So you had a nice variation
Hmm.
that, and you could close the book at night having finished a letter.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's very digestible and literary, because she
Thank you.
mentions the books are mentioned throughout too, which I loved. So before writing this novel, you got a master's of philosophy in creative writing at Trinity College Dublin, and one of your tutors was the acclaimed author Claire Keegan. Can you tell us a few top tips from Claire about writing fiction, and how did you think about those top tips when you were writing The Correspondent?
Oh, Elena, what a great question. I'm hoping people will ask me, tell me what you learned from Claire, because I learned so much from her. I would like to say that Claire is so generous of spirit when she's teaching. I've said this in other interviews too, but I really think about how when she taught us what she knew about writing, her whole mentality about it was a generosity of spirit, a sort of way she was saying, here's everything I know. Here's all of my knowledge and wisdom about writing, and you can have it. You can have
Mm,
everything I have. She wasn't
yeah,
stingy.
wasn't
Or
threatened.
no, she wasn't. She just was so generous with all of her understanding of fiction.
Yeah.
And a couple of things, I do kind of feel like Claire lives a little behind my left shoulder when I'm writing now. A couple things that stand out. She would say that when you're creating a world of fiction, you are creating this whole universe that's sort of inside of a bubble, like a soap bubble or something. And this whole world, I don't know that she used that exact phraseology, but you
Mm.
create this world inside of a bubble. And when your reader comes into the bubble through the text, if you're the short story or the novel or whatever it is, you are bringing them inside of this world. And if there's ever a moment where the reader sits back from the text and says, I don't believe you, you have lost, you've lost it. You've lost the story. The story no longer stands, she would say. And she takes writing fiction very seriously, as do I. But I have always thought about that ever since learning from her. I've thought about that when I write scenes or when I write dialogue or any part of a story. I always think, thinking about my reader, do you
Yeah.
believe it? Do you believe what's happening? Would this character do this? Do you believe me? Even if it's a wild thing that happens, even if it's something very dramatic, it still has to be something that the reader believes. And so whenever I'm revising or writing, I'm thinking, do you believe me? Do you believe me? Do you believe me? And so that has been helpful for me. She also
Nice.
that when you enter a story as the writer, you are making an incision in time, in the timeline of this world, and you're deciding, we're starting here at this moment. John McGahern, I believe, has this famous quote that is, every good story starts with a person in a place. And Claire says, you have to decide why you're making the incision in the timeline there, and if that might not be the best place to begin. And so that is helpful for me also. That's more of a thing I consider at the beginning, or deciding what the beginning of a story will be. But this idea of what's the reason for this incision in the timeline, that's really helpful. One more thing I'll share. I'll give two more brief. She says, if you don't know what to do next when you're writing, you follow the feet. You follow your person that you're writing about's feet. Where do their feet go? You can always follow them where they go. Like, I think what she was trying to teach us was that it can't just be this cerebral thing. It needs to be tactile and physical. People go places. People,
Right.
follow their physical body. And then the thing probably I think about the most that she would say, you can see it's like I have a million things I could say, but
Yeah.
she says, whatever you put into the story from the beginning, any detail, any person, any factor, anything that's at the beginning has to be braided in to the end as well. And so you can't put things in and then they never bear on the story in the long run. And so
Right.
if you get to the end of the story and something that you put into the story at the beginning doesn't bear on the end, get it out.